Thank you very much. Any further debate? The Honourable Member for Kamfinsa.
Madam Speaker, allow me to thank you most sincerely for the opportunity to make a few comments on this very, very important topic, the topic that relates to the Access to Information Bill, number 14 of 2023. From the onset, Madam Speaker, I want to indicate that I've had an opportunity to read this proposed piece of legislation. I have analyzed this piece of legislation from the first page going all the way down to the last page. And I will render my comments and my opinion, Madam Speaker, and let me be put on record, Madam Speaker, that this particular piece of legislation, inasmuch as it attempts to achieve very, very important objectives, there are provisions in this law, in the proposed law, Madam Speaker, that unfortunately will dilute the very intention of achieving access to information. Madam Speaker, when I look at the limitations that have been provided in this piece of legislation, and I'll quickly refer the Minister of Information to a provision that has been provided under Part 4. Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, under Part 4, we have provisions for exemptions. Now, Madam Speaker, if you go to Section 22, which describes what matters qualify to be those of public interest, Madam Speaker, you will note that Section 22 is at variance or in conflict with Section 24. Because in Section 22, Madam Speaker, the law is basically saying the following issues qualify to be those of public interest. But when you go to Section 24, A, B, and it goes down further, there are some exemptions that this you can't be provided with. And I'll give an example, Madam Speaker. Currently, the nation has been following very attentively the issue pertaining to the transaction between ZCCM-IH and Vedanta Resources. Given the provision which is provided for under Section 24, Madam Speaker, citizens cannot compel government through ZCCM-IH to provide those particular details of the agreement that has been signed between the Zambian government through ZCCM-IH and Vedanta Resources. It is my considered view, Madam Speaker, that Section 24, which is in conflict with Section 22, in the context of public interest, Madam Speaker, this particular provision should be removed from this proposed bill to ensure, Madam Speaker, that we achieve what we've always wanted to achieve. What have we always wanted to achieve as a country, Madam Speaker? We have wanted an opportunity for people to go to an institution such as the Industrial Development Commission, to go to the Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines, to request for information that pertains to issues that affect our livelihood as a nation. Here is an opportunity, Madam Speaker, for Parliament to do the right thing. And what is that right thing they have to do? If there's a provision in the law, which in this case is Section 24, which is in conflict with issues pertaining to public interest, Madam Speaker, I urge the executive arm of government that this proposed bill needs to be dealt with in the context of providing enabling provisions, not providing provisions that, at the end of the day, prevent citizens from accessing those particular pieces of information that they require. So my first submission, Madam Speaker, is that Section 24 needs to be reviewed and recasted to ensure that citizens have access to specific information. Secondly, Madam Speaker, this piece of legislation has provided for exemptions of military information. Now, Madam Speaker, we have no problem, and I believe citizens who are responsible have no problem with the Zambia Defense Wings not providing information on operations, because those are highly sensitive. But, Madam Speaker, when the exemptions extend to issues to do with procurement, then we are concerned, because the exemptions should only have applied to issues pertaining to operations of the military, operations of Zambia police, those that indeed border on state security. But, Madam Speaker, if this law is going to extend these exemptions, meaning a citizen cannot ask an information holder to provide information on procurement under the military or any defense wing, Madam Speaker, then we are concerned. Then the citizens who have been waiting for the last many years that we've waited for this piece of legislation, Madam Speaker, the citizens are concerned that what are we going to achieve if we are going to prevent citizens from demanding information even on matters pertaining to procurement. So it is my considered view, Madam Speaker, it is the submission of the people of Kamfinsa constituency that the provision that relates to exempting information on procurement by defense wings, Madam Speaker, should not be provided in this piece of legislation. In the interest of time, Madam Speaker, I note that if someone is denied information today, this law is proposing that the first line of appeal is the Human Rights Commission. If the Human Rights Commission decided that indeed that information someone has requested shall not be provided, that person has got a second line of appeal, which is the High Court. My question to the Minister and my question to this august House, which will eventually form my submission, is that how many of our citizens today can afford a lawyer to pursue a matter in the High Court of Zambia? Currently, there are so many people who've been denied justice because they can't afford a lawyer. So how then do we deny people information and we tell them, go to court and ask the court to grant you the relief? Madam Speaker, we are not achieving what we intend to achieve. This is a citizen law. This is a piece of legislation, Madam Speaker, which should enable citizens access information. In its current form, through the provisions that have been provided, Madam Speaker, we are denying citizens the very information that we are supposed to provide. My last submission, therefore, Madam Speaker, is that the provision that relates to reliefs in the High Court, provisions that relate to reliefs through the Human Rights Commission, Madam Speaker, will come with a cost. How then should we ensure that we provide legal representation to those that are seeking information? My submission, therefore, is that government must meet the expenses for legal fees for those that seek information that have not been provided, to ensure, Madam Speaker, that citizens are not denied access to information. Madam Speaker, due to the limitation of time, I would have requested that I'm given an additional 8 minutes to ensure that I submit all the remaining particular concerns. But I know that the standing orders will not allow. Madam Speaker, this piece of legislation is not going to achieve the intended objectives. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. I hope you had an opportunity to appear before the committee. So, oh, well.